Hey, this is Stephen Platinum, your friend in wrestling, with Platinum versus The Road to Fyter Fest Part 2. So this is a promo show that was on YouTube to promote Fyter Fest Night 2, which is happening tonight in place of AEW Dynamite. It wasn't a very long thing. I can see why. It got considerably less attention. I would have loved to see this thing pop up. One, I would have loved to know about it when it happened, but that's not really anybody's fault, I don't think. I would have loved to see this right after Fyter Fest. I would love more people to see it. I think it's really great for what it is, and the two main segments that they focused on, I think they did a great job. But I'm wondering, if you've got 40,000 people watching it, isn't that your hardcores? Isn't that your dedicated? Isn't that the people that were going to watch it regardless? I would just like to see these resources and this time spent on these things, getting them not only a greater effect and potentially a bigger audience, but I really think there's little touches in these things that are so effective and so good. The screen capture that I'm putting up as the audio is playing is just a take that I had of how good these clip segments are and how good the people doing them are at putting together stories in ways that are easily digestible and easy to understand. I do feel like these things should be shared more, perhaps with the infinite amount of wrestling websites that cover wrestling that are appealing to the fan base that potentially would watch AEW or be inclined to watch it more. That would be my first suggestion, is to get these things out early, even earlier than they appear on YouTube perhaps, to places like, just PW Insider, etc., 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 etc. I think they would really appreciate it. It would give them content. They would be more inclined to talk about it and all of that kind of thing. Enough of my yammering on about suggestions about how to get these things out there. And I gotta say, the reason I'm suggesting it is because I like it so much. The Superman punch by Orange Cassidy to Chris Jericho that was used in the clip, combined with the little sound, the little Foley action. Not that it was supposed to make you think like, oh, they're putting in a sound effect to do the punch, but it was just sort of like a musical crescendo kind of thing. Again, I challenge you to tell me that these things by AEW aren't the equal of the WWE's clip packages. They are. They're really that good. And everywhere where AEW can compete, they are competing. And I see that. So we first have the story of the Young Bucks and FTR teaming up together to take on Butcher and Blade and the Lucha Bros. And I think this was done very smart in that they're talking about the elephant in the room, which is the match that we're leading to eventually is Young Bucks and FTR. And they go into that at length. And this is a thing that they're not just cashing out on right away, and I think it's smart. I'm reminded of when Kurt Angle went to TNA, and they threw him and Samoa Joe in there right away together. And it had great short-term effects. It was the highest buy rate that I believe they ever got for a pay-per-view, which, by the way, paled in comparison to what AEW does. So that's an interesting stat, right? But they rushed it to the gate, and then they just ended up not getting a good long-term thing. Whereas this Young Bucks FTR thing, they're definitely taking their time. They've come up with the story that FTR is protecting the Young Bucks in a sense, so when they finally do meet, there's no excuses, which is as good as a reason as any. And after they went into, and I thought Tony Schiavone in particular was really good at sort of capturing the idea of the Young Bucks and FTR. And I also thought that the Young Bucks came across really well in this. Sometimes when they cut a promo, it doesn't really play for me, but this one really did. And I loved the fact that they got in the notion that we've done more for inside the ring as far as for tag team wrestling, but also outside the ring, which is undeniably true. And I think it's one of those things that nobody can take that away from them, no matter what they want to say. And I really like that they got that in there without feeling really heelish about it or overly braggadocious, but just stating a fact. I love that they brought in Butcher and Blade on sort of the back end, along with the Lucha Bros, and showed them being effective against the Young Bucks and FTR. That they're not trying to make this match something that it's not. Obviously, it's an exhibition for the Young Bucks and the FTR, and they're not shying away from that, while also emphasizing the fact that, you know what, Butcher and Blade, I love the little things that Butcher and Blade said, and I loved the part where the Lucha Bros spoke in Spanish. That's the most effective I've seen on American wrestling television, somebody speaking Spanish and coming across effectively. Obviously the subtitles certainly help that effect, but their overall look helps as well. This is a Butcher and Blade and Lucha Bros look very menacing, and I think that's just a great way to put it. And then having Jim Ross throw in the thing of like, if you just think that these guys are going to lay down, you're crazy, is great without overselling the fact that, I mean, Young Bucks and FTR are going to win this match, and chances are they're not going to have a split during this match. But they alluded to the fact that was a possibility. Of course, you want all of that. So I think they've gotten as much as they can out of this sort of cobbled together match. I will say I prefer this format rather than doing some kind of scramble thing with the 4 teams. I think this works much better. And again, it's building up the future for a Young Bucks FTR match. Again, effectively done, and I would have loved more people to see this package. Chris Jericho, Orange Cassidy. I think starting with the Tyson stuff is good. You have to get as much of that stuff in as you can. You have to get as much mileage as they can. The Chris Jericho Tyson segment, which I thought in real time did not work nearly as well as they wanted it to, they've managed to cobble together with editing and make it look great, and sort of emphasize the fact that it did get outside attention, such as it was, and whatever that means in the long term. They're emphasizing the strengths, de-emphasizing the weaknesses. That's what you're supposed to do. I think it's smart. I forgot the part where Chris Jericho called out Tyson the next time, and Orange Cassidy kind of came out. I remember that got a big pop out of me and people watching. Really funny. Something that I would have booked, honestly, in the PCW days. And that's all kind of led here. I liked Chris Jericho downplaying Orange Cassidy and a very selective word choice, calling him quaint, calling him funny, calling him like good. And if you stayed in the Orange Cassidy world, that was fine, but now he's in my world. I like that a lot, because what it does is, they say you're not supposed to talk bad about your opponent, but what Chris Jericho is doing here is very overtly setting up Orange Cassidy to go to the next level. I remember Chris Jericho bragging that he was going to make Adam Page, which I thought was so overt that it sort of belied the reality, which was like, ugh. Adam Page has managed to get over, and Chris Jericho was a part of that, but I think guys overtly saying, I'm going to make them, sort of makes it so that that's kind of impossible. Whereas here, it's much more analogous to Chris Jericho is like, sort of downplaying the threat of Orange Cassidy while acknowledging that, like, I don't underplay anybody, but he is kind of underplaying him. It's setting up Orange Cassidy to be able to surprise us. I thought Jim Ross throwing in, Jim Ross being the Mercutio of this thing is very smart as well. What do I mean by that? I read a thing once because my background is in literature and literature studies. And I read a thing once calling something the Mercutio factor. Mercutio is in Romeo and Juliet. And Romeo and Juliet, on the face of it, is this really sappy, dumb story in a lot of ways. It's really overt and obvious. But having Mercutio point out the sappier aspects and point out the mistakes that the characters are making removes the power of the negativity. By him pointing it out, now the audience is allowed to just enjoy the story for what it is, because somebody has addressed their concerns that they had in the back of their mind. And I think Jim Ross is doing that here. I didn't like Orange Cassidy at first, but he won me over, and there's no way to deny that he's a unique talent. I think by Jim Ross pointing out the fact that a lot of people saw Orange Cassidy as, the Antichrist of wrestling and all that Jim Cornette shit, and sort of taking it and then diffusing it. Is really powerful. And then for the people that do know Orange Cassidy, I think his line at the end where he takes off his glasses very seriously, looks at the camera and says, "Chris, I'm going to try," was really funny and really great, and sort of again gives us a nice foreshadowing hint that Orange Cassidy is coming out swinging, and the clips back that up of Orange Cassidy tackling Chris Jericho, punching him in response to his glasses being broken, and then again that killer Superman punch, not the one that put Chris Jericho through the table, which was what it was. I mean, that's a good spot and all. Actually, I thought the thing where he pull Jericho's neck down onto the pole was a fantastic spot. I'm glad they had that in there. But it's the Superman punch that he gave him in the ring that I have here for the screen capture that I thought looked really great. I think Orange Cassidy, there is pressure there. I think he has to definitely hold up his end. It can't be Chris Jericho trying to carry him. It can't appear that way. It has to be Orange Cassidy really. It's going to be, this is my prediction for the match. I think Orange Cassidy is going to make Chris Jericho work. Because I have not been silent about how I think Chris Jericho has sort of kind of slacked off and kind of let us down a little bit in the last 2 months. And this is his chance, because now this is the real main event of the show, because there is no Moxley. And I think they've done a good job with covering that up. So that segment I thought really worked as well. I really thought it was effective. I thought both things worked really well. Nyla is going to be in a match. Okay. Lance Archer is going to be with Joey Janela, which is not really, I mean, none of these matches really light your fire, right? I will say that Private Party getting a title shot is really cool and really interesting. And I also think the tag match between the Dark Order, but this of Brody Lee and Colt Cabana, who would or would not be in the Dark Order, against the team that they're facing, SCU. I think that's really great. I really hope for Dynamite tonight they separate those tag matches. I really hope they do that. We'll see if they do. But anyway, again, a very effective thing. I would have loved to have more people see it, and more people see it who had the chance of becoming AEW fans or giving Fyter Fest a try that wouldn't have otherwise. That's the main critique I have of this thing, is more like macro rather than micro. I think as what it was very effective, and it looked really, really great.